Back in February, Jake Kliegl had the pleasure of interviewing Dean Meseck, who was a crane operator for about 8 months in Vietnam. Upon returning to the States, Dean believes that his skills that he learned in Vietnam better prepared him for the work that he's done all around the United States as a heavy equipment operator. I know I personally enjoyed hearing about how much it meant to Dean to receive care packages from home, especially those that included homemade chocolate chip cookies while he was stationed overseas. And that's just a little reminder of how much something from home can help someone feel more at ease. And a reminder that we can do that for our current military members serving abroad. Thank you for tuning in to our 8th podcast in our series of Vietnam veteran interviews.
My name is Jake Kliegl, and on February 21st, 2018, I interviewed Vietnam veteran Dean Meseck.
I'm Dean Meseck. I was 20 years old when I went into the Army. I was in Vietnam 8.5 months. I was stationed at Bien Hoa, which was probably about 30 miles from, what is now Ho Chi Minh City. It was Saigon then.
I feel fortunate to be given the privilege to sit down and talk with such a humble individual. We learned in class that not all veterans were treated well when they returned to the States from Vietnam. For those of you who have been following our podcast, you've heard some veterans talk about this. These men signed up to fight in a war that many people believe wasn't our war to fight. But these men that we've interviewed weren't draft dodgers. These men served our country faithfully. Every veteran we interviewed said he would do it again. It was an honorable thing to do. Let's get started from the beginning with Dean as he talks about boot camp.
That was different for me. At Fort Leonard Wood, I had 8 weeks of boot camp. Then I had 8 weeks of AIT, Advanced Individual Training. And then I had a few weeks of combat training. And I went right from there. Well, I came home. Was on leave for 14 days. And then I had to go to Omaha and fly out of Omaha and head to Vietnam right away. So a lot more physical work than I'd been used to. At the end of the day, you were tired, but that too got easier. By the time boot camp was over, it was a lot easier. I never had any problems. I was kind of a jokester all the time, so I'd done a lot of push-ups.
Personally, I can't imagine being uprooted from small-town Iowa and being put on a plane to a foreign country. Dean said it really didn't take long to adapt.
It was a lot different than what I was used to. It didn't take long to kind of fall in the groove over there of what, once you found out what you were supposed to be doing, and it wasn't too hard to fall in. It seemed like after I was there for a short while, I was just more relaxed. I think you kind of grow into the situation. I was a lot more comfortable the longer I was there. We had little wooden barracks. To me, they almost reminded me of a chicken coop or something. We would have had back home when I was growing up on the farm. Didn't have it was a warm enough climate. We didn't have glass over the windows in there. We had screen, and there were louvers to keep the rain from entering. There was 2 stories, a 2-story building, and there was probably we called them hooches. There would be 6 hooches for each floor, and there'd be 2 guys in each hooch. Oh, it was probably about 12 foot by 8 foot, I would say.
According to Dean, Vietnam has about every type of terrain. Swamps, mountains, and forests. Pretty much everything. There were also monsoons and the humidity to deal with as well. As you've heard in previous interviews, the smell in Vietnam is something everyone is hit with as soon as the plane touches down.
Oh, it was terrible. When I flew in country there, we landed at Cam Ranh Bay. We got out of that plane and it just hit you. It was awful. But I think a lot of it was they burned the human waste, and that was it was nasty. Rank. So yeah, that's a smell that kind of stays with you. I mean, you just think about it and you can smell it. Human waste was in a barrel and they lit it on fire. And, yeah, it was not good.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
But what about the first night?
That first night, I was at Cameron Bay for a couple days processing, and then they put us in a plane with no windows. It was a cargo plane. The back end dropped. It had wood benches along the sides, and we sat on them wood benches, no windows. They had light in there, dim light, but no windows. And they flew us out of Cameron Bay, and then they dropped us at the bases because we weren't all going to the same base. And but when we got to base that day, well, then they give us our M16 and all our gear, and we kind of stayed us new guys stayed in a hooch, a little barracks type thing, and but that first night we were real close to having to go out that first night. But I suppose midnight or so, the sirens on the base started going off, and they come and yelled, "Get your gear on, get dressed, get your gear on. We're gonna go, we gotta go." By the time we got outside, and they said, "That's false alarm." But I tell you what, that got the adrenaline going.
Dean, like most of the veterans we've interviewed, said that everyone in his unit got along.
Oh, I got along real good with them. I was kind of I guess you'd say I was kind of the jokester of the bunch. We all got along real well.
Have you kept in touch with any of them?
No, I haven't, and I wish I would have. There was one fella in particular. We had big plans of when we got back to the States, we were both going to buy a Harley, and we were just going to travel. We never did do it, and I've never talked to him again since being there.
Have you ever thought about what happened to all the equipment that was damaged during war? Dean has the answer to that question for us.
My job was, I was with the engineers. I was a crane operator. So we went out into the countryside, the fields, and load up and haul in any retrograde equipment, stuff that wasn't under its own power, wouldn't move. Brought it in, and they had to wash it and classify it, and then we loaded it on trucks at the base and shipped it to the ports to be loaded on ships and shipped back to the U.S. A lot of nights we would be on like guard duty. Some nights I'd be out where my crane was located, and I'd be out there all night just by myself, and it was a little bit scary. And sometimes I'd be out on perimeter guard, where you had two guys. There were two of us in a bunker, and every so far there would be another bunker every so many 100 yards. And,
Dean explained in more detail how these cranes were utilized.
Used them out in the field to pick up trucks, jeeps, tanks, anything that would not power itself. We'd go out and load them on big trucks, and they'd haul them in to the base, and they had a wash rack there with, I suppose they had 50 guys washing this equipment, but they had to wash it all. Everything had to be washed off on it, and then they would classify it and tag it. Then it would be put in what looked like a big old salvage yards, but everything was in the army, like it was all organized, and everything was tagged. And then there was, at the main yard, there was 3 cranes there that would load trucks there and haul it down to the port to be put on ships. And the other railhead were the train cars. They had a 140-ton crane. That's where I started when I went over there, up at the railhead with that 40-ton crane. And I would load rail cars, and there'd be about 4 guys on the ground, and then I was the operator, and then I'd load that, and then they'd get the train loaded, and they'd take that down to the port, and all that stuff was loaded on ships, and I'm not sure where it went.
When I asked Dean to sum up his time in Vietnam, this is what he said.
Well, all I can say is it was an experience. I mean, it wasn't all good experience and it wasn't all bad experience. It it probably was a good thing for me, because I was kind of a problem when I was young. It probably done me some good. I learned a little respect, and I still have a lot of respect.
Respect. I have a great deal of respect for not only Dean Meseck, but everyone who has served in the military. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, for helping Jake and other Ridgeview students gain a deeper understanding of the Vietnam War. This interview concludes the first group of students' interviews from second trimester, and we are now looking for more Vietnam veterans to interview in early May. So, if any Vietnam vets are listening and would be willing to share their experience with a different group of high school students, please contact the Ridgeview High School. These interviews have been invaluable to students' learning, and I truly believe their interviews are something that they'll never forget. So if you'd like to volunteer to help our third trimester students gain a better understanding of the Vietnam War, please contact me, Mrs. Basinius, at the school. That number is 712-368-4353. Thank you.